This is the scandalous story of a young seamstress who walked into a hospital with stomach pain and walked out missing her right arm. A groundbreaking story that continues to shape Ghana's law on medical negligence. The story begins in May 1967 with KUMAH, a seamstress who lived in Swami Kumasi. She had a husband and one child and dreams of growing her business and building a family. But one day, severe stomach pain sent her to a private hospital where doctors made a discovery. She had an ectopic pregnancy with complications. The private doctors knew they were out of their depth and so referred her to Komfanoche, Kumasi's biggest hospital. They performed surgery and the surgery went well. The doctors successfully treated her pregnancy complications and she was recovering nicely. But then came the routine part, a simple blood transfusion to help her heal faster. The nurses came to her bedside and inserted a needle, but something went horribly wrong. After some time, her right arm began to swell and the skin started changing color. Even her palms darkened. The swelling became infected and spread through her like wildfire. Her right arm began to rot before her very eyes. The smell was horrible and the pain was just too much to bear. Her husband would later testify that she was moving her head from side to side in agonizing pain. It was apparent that the blood was not percolating into the vein as expected, but was dripping onto the ground. The husband complained and was instructed to buy some equipment from a store at Bantima. He did so, but the equipment was never used. The senior medical officer in charge then, Dr. Ama, delivered devastating news. To save KUMAH's life, they would have to amputate her arm as it had become gangrenous. This woman had entered the hospital to treat a stomach condition and was now losing a limb. Imagine the horror. Her livelihood and independence was over because of what was supposed to be a routine medical activity. The amputation was performed despite her strong objections, and she survived. But her life as she knew it was over. The trauma was immediate and overwhelming. Her career as a seamstress was over. She became dependent on others for basic tasks she had performed effortlessly her entire life. But the horror didn't end there. Her husband abandoned her. The man who vowed to stand by her in sickness and in health walked away when she needed him the most, using customary law as an excuse. She was left alone, disabled, unemployed, and emotionally shattered. Facing this torrent of losses, she made the bold decision to sue the hospital. She brought 4 witnesses. KUMAH herself was a star witness. Her soon-to-be ex-husband and her father-in-law also testified. Dr. Amponsa, who referred her to Komfanoche, was also called. They testified that the needle insertion had been problematic, that the blood wasn't flowing properly through her vein. Her husband wrote to the hospital after the amputation for explanation, and Dr. Ama, at a meeting convened, was very candid, stating that what happened was a mistake and that he would personally organize an artificial limb and compensation for KUMAH. Intriguingly, Dr. Ama was never called as a witness by Komfanoche, and they denied any mistake on their part. The referring doctor, Dr. Amponsa, would testify in court that her arm was perfectly fine before the referral. But then they hit a massive wall. Causation is a significant point to prove in establishing medical negligence. So even if the needle insertion was not perfect, KUMAH couldn't prove that this specific error caused the gangrene that led to her amputation. Medical procedures have many variables and infections can happen for many reasons. How could anyone definitively say that the needle insertion was the cause of the gangrene? And this is where many medical negligence cases fall apart. The technical complexity of medicine makes it nearly impossible for ordinary people to prove causation to the required threshold. But the eminent Justice Taylor did something extraordinary in that courtroom. KUMAH had pleaded the legal principle of res ipsa loquitur to say that on the face of what happened, the hospital was plainly negligent, but it was struck out as inappropriate. Parties are not to plead argument or law, only facts. But upon a review of KUMAH's case, the judge saw merit in the application of res ipsa principles. People don't go to hospitals with stomach problems and leave missing their arms unless something goes catastrophically wrong. The evidence of negligence on the part of Komfanoche was so glaring that KUMAH did not need to prove every technical detail. When someone goes in for a routine medical care and suffers an injury that shouldn't happen under normal circumstances, the burden shifts to the medical providers to explain what went wrong. This is when Komfanoche's case began to crumble. Komfanoche called 3 witnesses: Dr. Poku, who did the initial operation on the ectopic pregnancy, One, Dr. Lahiri, who amputated the arm, and the pathologist, Dr. Mabel, who examined the amputated arm. When pressed for explanation, Dr. Lahiri and Dr. Mabel were very candid. They both concluded that the only reasonable explanation for such severe gangrene was that the medical equipment, the blood infusion apparatus, needles, drip stand, and others had not been properly sterilized. In their view, gas gangrene was caused by anaerobic organisms which must be deep in the body's tissues where there is no oxygen. There were no lacerations on the arm apart from the spot where the needle pierced, so to them, that was the cause. Dr. Poku, who had performed the original surgery, was however less forthright in his answers. He blamed the gangrene on thrombosis, but when pushed about how the bacteria could have gotten into KUMAH's tissue, his response was unimpressive. He answered that this is the mystery. The court rejected this as a very evasive response. In the court's view, there was no mystery at all. What there was negligence, and the other medical officers had admitted it. The judgment that followed was groundbreaking. The court didn't just award basic compensation. It recognized the full scope of KUMAH's losses. She received money for her immediate medical expenses and lost wages, but the court went much further than that. They awarded her compensation for pain and suffering, recognizing that the physical and emotional trauma that she had endured had value that money could never replace it. They calculated her future lost earnings, acknowledging that her disability would affect her income for the rest of her life. They even awarded money for a maidservant, recognizing that she would need help with basic tasks. Additionally, the court ordered damages for what they termed loss of amenities of life, the basic pleasures and activities that most people take for granted, but were now impossible for her. Simple things like clapping her hands, carrying groceries, or embracing someone with both arms. But perhaps most groundbreaking was the court's recognition of a type of damage rarely acknowledged in legal systems. They awarded compensation for the loss of her marriage and diminished prospects for future relationships. The court explicitly recognized that her husband's abandonment was a direct result of her injury, and her disability would make it harder to find love and companionship in the future. This wasn't just about money. It was the court acknowledging the full human costs of medical negligence. The court was saying that when medical professionals destroy someone's life through carelessness, they must account for every aspect of the destruction, including social and emotional consequences. The case establishes several lessons that influence medical negligence today. First, it demonstrates that patients don't need to have medical degrees to seek justice when obvious negligence occurs. The principle res ipsa loquitur is your friend. Second, it shows that courts must go beyond immediate medical costs and consider the full impact of negligence on a person's life. Third, it revealed an uncomfortable truth about medical professionals. When faced with clear evidence of negligence, some medical professionals, and even in this case, Comfort Notching, became evasive rather than admitting fault. As you will recall, they failed to call some material witnesses. But then beyond the legal technicalities, this is a story of human resilience and a stark reminder of why judicial efficiency matters. KUMAH fought this battle for 8 years, and her perseverance was remarkable. But in the end, the system must do better. Follow Super Law GH Studios for more real stories, real cases, real people.